So, Reverend Dominic Wright, cycling is the new thing.
Well, it is, yes. I've actually been cycling for years, but during this lockdown, I think that many people have had the opportunity to get their bikes off, dust their bikes off from the garage, and get cycling again. And I think in the first month or so, when the traffic went to almost nothing, it was the most incredible experience for many people to be able to get out on the roads and to cycle so far, and to have that sort of sense of safety and security. So I think it's been a great experience for lots of people.
During the early days of the lockdown, the furthest I went from my front door was literally to the end of my street, which isn't too far from you, at St Margret Church in Olton. But I often got the feeling, watching the cars go by, the lack of the cars go by, it always reminded me of if you went for a walk on Christmas Day.
Yes, yeah, it did have that feel about it.
Do you see what I mean? There's no public transport about to speak of, or whatever it is. It's empty. There's very few cars about. There isn't the hum of the traffic. So getting the bikes out was an ideal thing, really.
It was great, yes. And so I was involved with a sponsored cycling event, which I did from my driveway on my turbo trainer. It was a sponsored bike ride where I on a simulator, I cycled from Jerusalem to Damascus, and I was recreating a famous biblical journey from the Bible. But I set the children from our local primary school a challenge to see if they could cycle further than the 190 miles that I was cycling that week, and collectively the idea was just to see if you can all cycle about 10 miles. And the kids from the school got out on their bikes as well, and they sent in videos and photos of them cycling with their parents, and it was fantastic for people of all ages just to get out there and enjoy those empty roads.
So now you feel the opportunities there, now that we've begun to sort of ease our way out of lockdown, that it could be a change of a way of life for many of us. And Solihull, slightly smaller than Birmingham, say, so it's, forgive me, it's more manageable in terms of getting an idea across than it would be necessarily to. But I mean, although what I would say from Birmingham's point of view, that the Birmingham City Council invested heavily in cycle tracks alongside the River Ray and places like that. So you don't really tend to see much of that in Solihull. But you've got ideas for Solihull, haven't you? Tell us about those.
Yes, actually, I mean, talking about Birmingham, Birmingham's been doing a great job on this. And one of my favourite cycle routes, which again is suitable for children, is the A38, the Bristol Road, which is a new one. They put down the middle of the grassy bit, which years ago the trams used to run down.
That's right, yeah.
That's the most fantastic experience to take your kids out for a bike ride. So I took the train into Birmingham one day a few months ago. This was before lockdown, and took my 8-year-old daughter, and we cycled we sort of made our way on the pavements until we got to the beginning of the A38. And then we went to the Barber Institute at Birmingham University, and we cycled all the way down the Bristol Road. And that would have just been unthinkable before that cycle route was put in. But Solihull is actually behind, I would say, the rest of the West Midlands in terms of cycling at the moment. And I know that the councillors are working on a few ideas, but I think that there's a closing window of opportunity to really continue this cycling boom. So people got on their bicycles, and I think people enjoyed it. And as people are going back to work, the temptation is just to reach out and get back in that car and not think about how we carry on doing things differently. So my proposal for Solihull Council is that they do some temporary measures. So things like the cycle track that goes down the Bristol Road, well, that takes years of planning and lots of expense. My proposal to Solihull Council is to get this kind of change of behaviour, we need to do something this summer. I think we've still got the goodwill towards cycling, and we'll hopefully have a bit more hot weather. And so my proposal is we put pop-up cycle lanes, so using cones to cone off sections of the road, especially the main roads, and where that's not possible, to introduce 20-mile-an-hour speed limits to just make it feel safe for cyclists. I think cycling works best where you have a dedicated cycle lane. So shared use with pavements isn't always that good, because it gets on the nerves of the pedestrians. And obviously there's a danger for those who are newer to cycling, and just the volumes of traffic involved on the main roads make it a challenge. So I think to get that change of behaviour, we just need some temporary measures straight away that can just keep people cycling.
The two main roads which immediately spring to mind, people who may or may not know Solihull too well would be Warwick Road and probably Lode Lane, I would say.
Yes.
Would you think it'd be easy to have pop-up cycle lanes on either of those two roads?
Well, I was having a conversation with one of my councillors actually about Warwick Road, and that might actually be a possibility which might happen very soon. And certainly Lode Lane as well. It's got loads of space, hasn't it? You've got the bus lane there, and you've got several lanes of traffic in lots of places. I think Lode Lane would be a good one to do. I know that there's some sort of shared use with the pavement stuff going on there as well, but I think something that's on the road that keeps cars away from the bikes, but just gives the cyclist that confidence would be great. But I do think that what this needs to be is comprehensive for the whole of Solihull. So not just picking out the odd road here and there. I think actually somewhere across the whole of the borough, because I mean, yes, sometimes you'll want to go from Olton to Solihull, and in that instance, the best way to go would be up the Warwick Road. And the Warwick Road is a main road for people going between Birmingham and Solihull as well. But actually, there's all sorts of journeys that need to happen. People need to get to work in Jaguar Land Rover. People might need to get over to the High Street in Shirley. Teenagers living in Dickens Heath might need to go to football training somewhere else. And I think that this pop-up infrastructure could go a long way to just getting that change of behaviour embedded. I think that compared with other countries like Holland, for example, our teenagers are very dependent on their parents to ferry them around all the time. So I've got a few teenage daughters, and they go to school in Edgbaston actually, and I'd love to get them electric bikes and say, off you go. Why don't you cycle to school? I just haven't got the confidence to do that with the way that the roads are and the volumes of traffic at the moment. But if we lived in Amsterdam, that would be normal, and I wouldn't be taking my 12-year-old daughter to football training. She'd be taking herself. I think that there's a win in this for parents and for teenagers and children to be more independent, parents to be freed up to not be a taxi service.
So Solihull could become the Amsterdam of Great Britain.
That would be my dream, with regards to cycling, anyway.
But it's not just cycling as well, though. Your plans involve a permanent reduction in the speed limit to 20 miles an hour.
Yes, and I think that would make the roads a lot safer for cyclists, also for other road users. I mean, if you get hit by a car at 20 miles an hour, you're probably going to be okay. If you get hit by a car at 30 miles an hour, actually, when people are keeping to those speed limits, it's a lot less damaging than 40 miles an hour when you're going to become a cropper if you're unfortunate to get bumped off at that kind of speed.
I give the example of office workers because Monday to Friday, I am one, and we have found that during this lockdown period, we've managed to accomplish a lot more working from home than we ever thought we could in the office. So now that the lockdown is starting to ease and there are plans afoot all across the country to get Britain moving again, the organisation I work for have no real desire to open up our offices fully yet until at least September, because we've found that with the use of technology and smarter working, which is a phrase my people like to use a lot, we found that we can do the job just as well at home. There'll be occasionally times where you have to go into the office. Now, if that was sort of spread across the board, you'd get less traffic anyway, wouldn't you? Because more people would be staying at home. There'd be more scope to reduce the speed limit down to 20 miles per hour, and there'll be more room for the bikes.
Yes, and I think what that means for everyone, and I don't think that I'm a motorist as well as being a cyclist, and actually we don't need to feel defensive about these things, because ultimately that means that as a motorist you're going to get from A to B quicker than if you were stuck in a traffic jam all the way between Solihull and the edge of the borough. So I think this is a win for everyone, and all these things working together will help to be part of the solution. One thing that I think's happened though during lockdown and as we come out of lockdown is that people are using public transport a lot less. So although possibly the volumes of traffic haven't quite got up to pre-lockdown levels, I think they will do shortly, because people will be people who are fearful of the pandemic will be more likely to want to go in their cars than they would to go on a train or a bus. And whilst there's that fear there, I think that that's where cycling could also be a really in an alternative way to taking the car into town.
Have you met much resistance to this plan at all?
You know, I haven't yet. I was looking around. So I wondered whether when this got written up, it was written up in the Birmingham Mail by David Irwin yesterday, and I just wondered whether there would be any kind of negative comments. I haven't personally seen any. I mean, I'm sure there will be at some stage. I was a bit nervous about putting this on some of the local Facebook forums because sometimes they can get a bit negative. But I was very surprised at well, not surprised, but I was gladdened by the positive response that this received, actually.
Yeah, Olton's got a very active Facebook community, actually, hasn't it? In the local groups, which we've seen. So Solihull could become the Amsterdam of the UK. The speed limit could be reduced to 20 miles per hour. That's going to help carbon emissions, which everybody tells us are all very, very keen on. So it's a win-win across the board. So just finally, Reverend, St Margaret's. Tell us a bit about St Margaret's, and obviously we'll put the invite out there for parishioners to join you regularly.
Absolutely. So St Margaret's Church is a really friendly, welcoming Church of England church on the Warwick Road in Olton, just opposite Olton Station, opposite Platform 3, the new pub there. And actually, this last Sunday, we opened up for worship for the first time in 3.5 months since the pandemic. So we've got lots of processes in place. We've got a one-way system. We cleaned the pews down after everyone sat in them, and we made sure that everyone's kind of socially distanced. And we've got 2 new services. So one is our 9:30 family service. So that's suitable for children and their parents. And we're really wanting to create a space where children and their parents can come in and reflect. And it's quite fast paced. There's games and there's video but it's also reflective as well. And they get the chance to just really engage their spiritual side. And then we've got a more traditional 10:30 service, which is where the bulk of our traditional parishioners went to on Sunday. But we're also live streaming the 10:30 service for those who still need to remain shielded at the moment.
And just finally, before we let you go, my kids used the service at St Margaret's before lockdown. Things like beavers.
Yes,
what have you. Is that coming back at all?
So I don't think that the uniformed organisations are coming back just yet. Obviously, as soon as we're allowed to kind of let our hall out again, then we'll be doing that as soon as those organisations are ready. But I'm not quite sure what the timescale is going to be for that. So it's only this last Sunday that weddings and funerals and services have been allowed back in church again.
Reverend Dominic Wright, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Ben. It's been good to talk to you.
You too.